Well, if you've been listening to the Elias Macko Show over the last week, we've been touching on this thread. Where does Canada rank worldwide? The team at U.S. News and World Report, they joined us last week because they recently ranked Canada as the second best country in the world. That's pretty darn good. But I also took note of an old column from Tristin at the National Post, who pointed out that in a whole bunch of metrics, Canada isn't the best. We're the worst. So let's get to the bottom of this. And I know we spoke to our listeners on this program yesterday about the very subject. Tristin Hopper from the National Post joins us on the line. Hi, Tristin.
Hello.
So let's get down to this here. Are we the best or the worst? What do you think of these rankings?
Oh, I wouldn't trust any of these rankings. It's sort of like if you just had a bunch of people who were ranking what's the best food. And then they would have all these sort of, single factor indicators like, well, people like sugar. So, if it's high sugar content, it's probably going to taste good. People like salt, that's going to be good. And then you just sort of analyze the food on these very specific metrics without taking the whole context into it. So you'd be like, well, this incredibly salty, sugary, fatty food, which is just like a pudding made out of old hooves and sugar. That's the best food, by this technical metrics we've done. So I've always said, if you're putting out some ranking and it says Vancouver is the most livable city in the world, you should obviously throw out your metrics. Take a plane, go to Vancouver, look around at, because I lived in Vancouver when a lot of these when it was topping rankings. So every couple months you'd have Vancouver's the most livable city top. And I was living in my incredibly expensive, baking hot condo that I could barely afford. And then, there was several overdose deaths, right on our front porch as you entered the building. The bus was just insane. There was always people freaking out, drinking, brandishing knives. And I thought, obviously this isn't the worst city in the world, but we're definitely not the best city. So whatever metrics were used to decide that we're the best obviously are complete garbage. So
okay, so Tristin,
whenever I see any of those, I only trust hard numbers, like GDP and other things. So those types of indices, I think they always favor Canada for some reason. I'm not sure why.
So Tristin, listen, point taken there, right? And it's brilliant when you talk about the Vancouver example as well. But, it's also it's invariable, right? Like whenever there's a ranking, Canada's always near the top. We got to be doing something well.
Again, I think it's because it's put together. Maybe it's put together by groups that don't have fond memories of the honeymoon they took to Banff in 1983. So they think, well, that sounds about right, and they haven't been to Canada recently, or they haven't been to a less scenic part of Canada. I'm not sure. Definitely, governments like to sort of tout this, and I think it's ultimately to our. It works against us because I think you have a lot of governments saying, well, we're number one on the National Cities Institute, International Cities Institute out of Geneva. And, you can sort of take comfort in these rankings and not notice that you have actually a lot of systemic problems, which kind of make it suck.
So let's talk about those systemic problems, as you put it, that make it suck. So housing, affordable housing, GDP, foreign investment. Why is that? Those things, why are they so concerning?
This was a ranking I put together a year ago. So I just told my editors, we're always in the top of these indexes. I'm going to find rankings in which we're not. There are a lot of rankings in which we're not doing great, but I'm going to find rankings in which we're the worst in the world. Canada is the absolute worst. It doesn't get any worse than us. And there was enough there that I was able to build a story. So obviously housing unaffordability is up there. I think some other countries might have passed us, but at the time I wrote this, we were the worst in the OECD for housing unaffordability. So that's when you tie income to the price of a house. So the ability of the average person to afford a home all across the country. I think only New Zealand is sort of another top contender. They also have an insane real estate for many of the same reasons. But at that point, it was Canada. Telecom prices, this is always shocking. Whenever Europeans move to Canada, the first thing they realize is just how unbelievably expensive our cell phones are and how little you get in return for that. I mean, you go to Europe and you pay like $10, $15 a month and you get unlimited data. That's just unbelievable by Canadian standards. I mean, I've got 4 gigs per month and my bill is often north of $60. Again, no one else on Earth comes even close to that. We have the worst telecom prices on the entire planet. And then, you can get into airline tickets per kilometer traveled on an airline. That's one of the worst. And, of course, our milk is crazy expensive for anybody who's traveled to the U.S.
Now, Tristin, with all that said, right, isn't there a worry if we take that type of view, right? Because, you got to compare us, that's part of rankings. You're doing comparisons here. There's so many metrics where, there's reasons to be proud of Canada. I want you to listen to a caller here. So we had a caller call in the program yesterday, and she compared Canada with her experience when she lived in Saudi Arabia. Have a listen.
Okay.
But you know what? When I see that the government helps their own people, and not another country, that's where I'm going to give respect. I went at the worst time in Saudi Arabia when Al-Qaeda was all over. However, nevertheless, I was respected. People think women don't have a voice. Yes, we do. We're allowed to drive now. Everything is so different now. They're actually living better than we are. That's problematic.
So, Tristin, I just worry that sometimes our view of Canada will lead to people saying, you know what, the country that had ISIS and women just got the right to drive is better than Canada. And I worry about that.
Yeah, I think there's, obviously you travel and you're going to think there's certain aspects that are better. But this is not an uncommon feeling. I've certainly felt this among millennials. Is they'll go on a trip to a country that on any number of metrics is worse than Canada, but people can afford homes. So you're like, yeah, sure, there's more crime, and I can't understand anyone, and it's literally Scotland, but at least they can actually there's a chance you could actually work a middle income job and afford a home. So I've heard all kinds of this. Countries that in the 1990s, the early 2000s, you wouldn't even consider moving there if you already had an address in Canada. Now you're like, it's not terrible.
With Tristin Hopper from the National Post talking about just how good or bad Canada is. So, Tristin, where should our focus be when we talk about what politicians should be tackling so that we're not at the bottom of the list in so many metrics?
Oh, my instruction is very simple. When we are the absolute worst in the world for something, maybe take notice of that, and that's maybe try and make us third worst in the world, fourth, make someone else be worst in the world in that particular metric. So, all of these things, and what the sort of through line I found in this, and I was agnostic about what I was going to find. It was just I'm trying to find worst in the world for all these things, and I found some surprising things. We had the most inefficient ports. At that time, we had the most delayed airports in the world. But sort of a through line through all this is government regulation and red tape. That's certainly true for housing. We just can't build the amount of houses we need because municipalities have zoning, et cetera, development fees. That's definitely true with telecoms. The government is very shy about letting in foreign competition. So that allows an oligopoly to sort of consolidate and jack up prices, and there's nothing we can do. When you look at all of these things, everything we suck at, there's sort of a one through line as to why that's the case, and that's sort of government control of the economy and regulation. You can sort of read, if every time we do this specific thing to an economic sector, it makes it the worst in the world, maybe we should work on dialing that thing.
And Tristin, to wrap up here, do you feel that politicians use these, like the U.S. News and World Report number 2 ranking, do you think they use these rankings to basically hide or, put focus away from our actual troubles in the country?
Oh, absolutely. Anybody who's worked for a business, I know this happened to me in the media, we'll get some obscure award from some organization nobody's ever heard of. And we'll put that in the front page. Like, we just won the, International Press Association's Best Design Award or something. So, I don't blame politicians for hiding behind that. But you should call out that we are winning awards that have no meaning and are just based on terrible math and don't mean anything.
Well, it certainly always makes for a good headline, no matter what. Tristin, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Tristin Hopper, a columnist over at the National Post.